check on Han'Nu'Na after having been away and prepared to remove some parts. We're going to see if anything has been removed. I would have liked to have been there when it happened, but they offered to shift stuff while I was gone, just to help move things along.
Pernah ku sangka ini terjadi, kisah cinta yang seperti ini. Kau pergi tinggalkan begitu saja. Sekian lamanya kita berdua. Pernah ku sangka.
So no action with removals of bits and pieces that I was sort of expecting the yard might have moved just to help me along, but actually that's quite good because I'm now able to get footage of that happening. So I'm looking forward to doing that starting hopefully tomorrow. So it's good to check in on the boat and unfortunately find the damage to the top of that pod, which I was intending to use as part of the top of the forward pod where the double bunk is going to be, but that's fine. It's not bad and I can repair it. I'm going to be doing further fiberglassing to it anyway, so we'll make it all work. Back at Hegarty's boatyard on a gorgeous day. It's been a gorgeous week out here. I've left things as finished in the last episode where we have these boxes to move, and I came in and had a little look the other day and none of them had been moved. So I've got to remove some deck, more deck, to get a couple of these boxes moved, and then I can start lifting these beams and doing the repairs. That's where we're at. I'm going to be working at some bolts here on the beams just to see I've got the right pieces to take those loose, and removing some decking. So it turns out there's the piece that holds the deck here is up against the pod, so I need to somehow get past it. The other side, it's shorter than that piece of wood on the other side, so there's a gap. So it seems to move past that side, no problem. Managed to get the pod up on its side. It's quite light actually. It's just a thin, maybe 3/8 inch plywood. So what's that? It's like 6 mil. It's got to be a little more. Maybe it's a 9 mil. I don't even think it's as thick as 12. So now I'm going to go for moving that pod. Go. Got both pods up and a big hole where they used to be. Next going to come up is going to be this, so I'm going to actually see if I can loosen that. Because if I can, we can get all three at once. Then I'm ready to start lifting beams. Right, so let's see if we can get some help now. We've got both pods up and the mast step loose right there. Here we go. here's a proper hole. That's where everything was. You can see that these two beams were carrying the mast. That mast step is going to be reversed. I won't be using that exact one. Well, I don't know if I will be yet. Might just. And that'll be where the mast is for the Wharram rig. So I'm ready to lift this beam here. This one still has the ramp attached to it and the net attached to it. So I need to remove those before I do anything there. The tricky bit is, in order to lift this beam, that's my first beam, I've got decking sitting on it. So I need to cut along here. I'm going to cut along because I'm not sure if I'm going to use this deck. You can see some of it's a bit worn, a bit old. It's all been on this boat since it was built. Untreated. It's held up really well, and parts of it I will definitely use again. But I think that I'm not going to be in too much trouble if I just cut along that edge, just inside of the lip. There's a lip on it, just like here. Just like this deck sits on it. It has its own lip. You can just barely see it in there. There's the end of it right there. So I will cut this side of the lip, so right about there. And then it's all held together with this piece here, so it won't have as much structure to it, but at least it'll stay there. And as long as I place my weight over this other beam that goes between the two cabins, then I'll be fine. So here we go. I'm going to, right now, I think I'm going to get a saw out and do some cutting. Over. I'm really pleased to have gotten a good chunk further, gotten the pods off. I've cut the deck, and I've gotten my first bolt of 8 off, and the rubber pads, which were trickier to get apart than I was expecting. Back again tomorrow. Marley and I are walking to work here. When we're down in West Cork, Ireland, we have a little cottage on an island known as Hare Island. And in order to get off, there's a ferry. And we're just walking to the ferry so that we can take it across to where the car is parked and drive on into Hegarty's boatyard. So I'm here removing the nuts that pin the beams to the system, the shock absorber system, which is based on these bits of rubber. There's about 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 of these guys that sit on these bolts, and then a metal plate goes on top of those, and then a washer and a nut. And that is the shock absorbing system. It all flexes a little bit when the boat moves and is going over over the swells, any of the sea. So one of the issue that I'm trying to resolve right now is that this rubber is underneath the beam, which is putting pressure on the cabin roof. That rubber is not part of the design of the boat and is a problem because it's putting unnecessary and unsupported weight onto what is basically a small and thin-walled bit of plywood. But as I'm taking this off, I've just discovered something. And I was just checking this, looking at this bolt, and I just made sure it was loose. It wasn't rusted tight to the steel here. And then I just realized, gosh, what's holding that up? It must be thicker underneath it. Surely something's holding it there. But there isn't. There's nothing holding it. And that's why, for some silly reason, they put this rubber in there. So I've got to go and look at the plans tonight and find out what the story is. But there should be something supporting this. Now, whether it's going to be rubber, I don't know what it's going to be. But there's got to be something that's holding this up. And right now, the only thing holding it up, this beam, is this rubber, which means all of the weight and all of the stress that this beam is supporting, while it's holding these two hulls together, is being pushed straight down onto the cabin roof. So that's a problem. It's not just that they've put the rubber underneath there, but they've actually used that to support underneath. Now I'm just going to go down below to show what it's doing again. I did this on an earlier video, but just so you can see, there's not the strength to hold this structure. And certainly I'd imagine that at times these beams are having the stress of perhaps even tons of pressure. So that thin plywood, which is probably about a 5/8 ply, something like that, metric, what, 12, maybe yeah, 12 mil, something like that, 15, I don't know, but it's not enough to support that. I'm down in the hull here, and I'm going underneath, and this is, so here's this is the chart room and workshop, and this is the access to one of the bunks, which is full of junk. And in between is this low area. So here we've got the top of the deck, and then a low area where it goes across, and that's where the beam sits, right in that notch. And here's where it sits, it's right on here. Now, the only structure is wood going the wrong way. Now, had this wood been placed lengthwise on there, I might consider that that was part of the structure and part of the design, but it's not, so that weight being pressed down would be supported, but it's not. And what we have over here is we've got a heavy plate that has the bolts coming through from the top side, and that's what supports the beam. Those two bolts there, and these two bolts here. And this heavy plate is the strengthener that's all tied in very strongly. I'm certain it's all epoxied in, so it's very strong. And that's what supports each hull. And then that's again right here. And then up again where that storage area is there. Above there is another one. And back here where this storage area is the beam. I believe that's beam number 1. So I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that rubber, now this one's not damaged. This one's actually okay. I don't really need to pull the beam off on this side, but I need to get the rubber out of there, and I need to figure out how to support this beam. Come down into the port side hull, which is where my cabin is, and the galley, and a sink and storage, and this has become our sail locker. which could be a double bunk, but right now it's where the sails sleep. And I'm underneath the port side here. And again, this beam isn't too bad. There's not any pressure, which is great because it means that all I have to do is lift those beams up, get that rubber out, and figure out how to support this properly. And figure out what the plans say. I might try and have a phone call with Hanneke Boone, the designer, to see if she has any insights. But luckily this side isn't too bad. This one here at the foot of my cabin is really bad. So here's this one. It's got a massive dip here, and above, which I showed in another video, a crack right along this edge up above. So that's the problem there. See, so the you can see the bow there where that's being pressed down, and the plywood is bowed pretty badly, compressed and blackened. So I may have to replace that whole piece right there. We'll see. So I've got movement. I've got a block under here, and I'm just using my jimmy bar, and it's lifting. It's moving quite a bit. So that's great, and I could actually get the rubber out. The problem is that then if I let her down, she's going to be sitting directly on the deck. So before I remove that rubber, I need to figure out from the plans what's supposed to be underneath this. It seems to me like it would make a lot of sense if it was sitting on rubber pads on the bottom as well as the top. You can see that rubber is a bit old. It all seems plenty strong, but also I'm going to have a little explore as to whether that's a problem or not. The original plans called for a bolt going straight through the middle point of this hull, of each hull, of that beam right through into the cabin. Now there is a heavier piece here, and it looks like that might be what that was installed for. I don't see any other purpose for it. There's nothing on the other side. It's almost like that's part of the old plan. Tony, who built the boat, didn't put those in for some reason. So yeah, something wasn't done according to the plans. So my endeavor here, as challenging as it might be and as much work as it might take, I think I need to have a good look at those plans and see what needs to be done to make it right. So that's all I can do on this side of the beam anyway right now. So I'm here at home and I'm pulling out the plans for the Tehini. So I've got all of my drawings here, piles of stuff. There's so much that comes through on a boat that size. Plus I've since gotten a load of different add-ons. So I've got my wing sail rig for the Tehini, which is what I'm working on. I've got the self-steering wind vane. I've started building one of those. So there's that detail. And then this big folder here is full of all of the Tehini plans. So let's see what I can find. go, connection of the hulls. That looks like the right one right there. So here we go. So the bottom, there's washers on both the top and the bottom. Now that actually is there. They're steel plates, but yeah, okay. So here's the design of the bolt. The bolt's just a bolt, so other than this little flange that keeps it at the top of the deck plate. And then there's a washer underneath the deck where that plate is. I don't see anything at the bottom of that, which is interesting, because that implies that something else holds it up, which I guess is why that rubber was in there. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because there's nothing about rubber. So this is the original design. There's a change to this, but here's the here's where the center of the beam is bolted to the cabin roof. And here you go again. Here's the beam, and there's a bolt hole. And in fact, look at this. There is a curved block underneath the beam in these drawings, which is, I have to say, that's quite remarkable, because the structure underneath the deck does not imply that the strength is there for that. So I'm missing something here. So this is the block that raises the center beam. Here we go. So that's what holds it up. It's a long rounded off block. Okay, so I've got to figure this out. I think I need to have a phone call with Hanneke and see what's going on.